Good morning or good afternoon, depending upon where you are. This is Lillian Barnes, and we are going to continue with our Grants Online new Federal Program Officer training class. This particular module that we're going to ready to do will be the Universal Application Processing. Again, Universal is the type of application that is attached to an RFA that is not competitive. Anything that is not competitive, we put under the umbrella of Universal. So that would include non-competitive, that would include formula, allotment, that would include institutional, and in the past it would have included earmarked, but we don't do those anymore. All right, so in order to get started with processing an application, a universal application, I'm going to log in as the Federal Program Officer that we use for training. So this is Chief Student. And let's go ahead and get going here. All right. In order to start with our application processing, we are going to simulate having an application come into us on paper. So we have gotten an application that has been sent maybe by courier, FedEx, and it did not come through grants.gov. So we have to get it into the Grants Online system. How do we go about doing that? We start by going to the Application tab, and we click on Input Paper Application. At this point, we need to associate this application with a Universal RFA that's already in the system. So we're going to go ahead and look for one that we've done in our previous webinar. I'm going to put in just a couple of data fields. I'm going to do a string search. We did one in our December class. So I'm going to put in a little bit of characters and do a search. And here we see several possible RFAs that we can use. Now, notice the type here. We have two that say N. Those are our two non-competitive, and we have two Cs. We don't want to use the Cs because we're going to do a universal application processing. So we're going to use one of the two Ns. And since we are actually doing a webinar right now, I'm going to select this particular one. Now, we need to go ahead and start entering data from that SF424 that's a part of the application package that has come into us. And right now, we're going to just create a very small amount of the data that is going to eventually become our entire application. Let's just find the applicant name. We're going to use the one that we use in training, which is General Atomics. And that would be the legal name on your SF424. There's an applicant type on the SF424, so find that applicant type. I believe this particular one is a for-profit organization. And then we need to select the state. So for this one, I'm going to select Colorado. I can't remember exactly which state this one is in because I'm not exactly looking at the SF424 right now, but you'll see that it will be it's not too important right now that you get all of the data exactly right. We're going to get that data right at a later point. So let me go ahead and click Save. And we are now at the screen that should show the data fields that you normally would see on your SF424. And we're going to start filling in the data fields where you see an asterisk. That lets us know these are our required data fields. So I'm going to start with the project start date. We're going to make this starting in October the 1st of this fiscal year, which would have been 2019. And we're going to give it, make this a 2-year project. So this is going to end on 9/30/2021. We're going to put in the receive date. For this particular one, we're actually recording this webinar in April, so I'm going to put today's date, 04 2020, and the time right now is 09:57 a.m. Okay, let's keep going down to where we see asterisks. We already have the name in from the previous page. I am also going to add in one data field that does not have an asterisk, and you'll see later on why it's important to add this particular data field, and that is the DUNS number. So the DUNS for this particular organization is 0676385957. Okay, that's the DUNS number for this organization. We're going to keep going down. We already have the state filled in. Let's keep going. Where's the next asterisk? The next asterisk is the type of applicant. We put that in on the previous screen. So let's keep going down. Now we need to put in the title of our project. So I'm just going to put in my user that I use for conducting the training class. I'm going to put that this is our demo application for Universal RFA application processing. Webinar. Okay, let's keep going. We'll scroll down. We're going to find out where else we have an asterisk. And we don't have another asterisk till we get to the very bottom of the page, and we have to enter in the funding information. The funding information is on the second or third page of your SF-424. We're going to make this a $20,000 award, and then we're going to now put in the details of this $20,000, because this is the combination of both federal and matching funds. So we're going to click on Add New. It is giving me an error message. The proposed start date cannot be before the proposed end date. So let me go back. I'm going to close this out. Let's take a look, and there may have been some data entry issues here. Oops, here it is. No. There we go. The date was not entered properly. So 10/1/2019, 9/30/2021. Okay, let's try this again. We're going to go down to the bottom and click Add New. All right, there we go. So once you've done that, the system will pick up the funding start and end dates based on the project start and end dates that you just entered on the previous page. Now I'm going to go ahead and add in the breakout of this $20,000 of funding. So we're going to make this $10,000 of federal funding, and we're going to get some matching funds on here, $5,000 for the state, $5,000 on applicant, and that'll total up to our $20,000. So let's scroll down here, and there we see this number right here. The total funding must calculate to the same amount that we put in this data field right here. I'm going to click Save as Draft. All right, at this point, I don't see any error messages. That's good. I am also, though, going to add an attachment, because if you get a paper application, which is the only other way that you can receive your initial applications, if you don't get them from grants.gov. The NOAA policy is if you don't get your applications via grants.gov, you must get them in paper where the applicant can actually physically sign the paper with an ink signature. So that's why you need paper. At this point, the policy is that NOAA does not accept applications that are submitted via email. Okay? So let's go ahead and click on the attachment widget here at the top, and we're going to add a couple of attachments. Notice there are two places on the screen to add attachments. The top one are the attachments that would be included for any reviewers that need to review. If they were doing their review in Grants Online, the part of the application forms that they need to see, you would put at the very top. If there are any additional application forms that the reviewers just don't really need to pay attention to, those would go at the bottom. This is important because when you get an application that comes in from grants.gov, you will get a variety of forms, your required forms, but then there's a couple of extra forms that just come in because they're coming through grants.gov. Those additional attachments don't need to be included in the review, and so they can stay at the bottom portion of this screen. So let me just put in a couple of test files here. We're going to just go here, just type in test. I have a couple of test attachments, so let's go ahead and pick this one up right here. This will be my SF424. All right, I'm going to save this attachment, and I'm just going to put one more attachment down here. So I'm going to click this plus sign, and I'm going to choose one more, test, and I'll pick up test 2. And this will be file not included for review. Okay? And we're going to go ahead and save that attachment. So now we do have a couple of attachments. And of course, you would actually be uploading all of your forms that you've gotten. If you get it in paper, you want to scan your forms separately. So each form, your SF424, your SF424A, SF424B, any project narrative or budget and additional budget forms, all of those attachments should be from the paper scanned as separate attachments rather than putting them in one gigantic PDF. It's much easier for the grants office to do their job if you have these separated into separate files. All right, so we've got our attachments uploaded. Return to application details. I'm going to scroll to the very bottom. And I'm going to click Save and Start Workflow. Okay, so now based on the information that we put into this particular application, the RFA will route it to whoever I set up in my RFA to process this application. In this case, it has come back to myself as G student, the federal program officer. So I now can move forward with my minimum requirements checklist. Now I'm going to stop for a second at this point, and I'm going to move over to our process map because I just started and I didn't show you the process map so that you can see what we're doing at this point. So I'm going to go to our training site right here, and I am going to go to Federal Program Office Training Resources. Here at the top are our process maps, okay? And I'm going to click on Universal Workflow because that's what we're doing right now. Okay, now let's look at our table of contents, and we see Create the RFA, which was already done previously. So we're in this particular process map. Unit-2, the Applications and Review Event Overview. So let's scroll down there. And this is where we are right here. Okay, we have just completed entering in our paper application right here. And it has now come into me as the assigned federal program officer for that application. And in order to complete this particular part of the process map, we need to do our minimum requirements checklist. And that's the next step that we're getting ready to do. For the purposes of the universal processing, we're not going to do the next 2 process maps. Those 2 we covered during our competitive processing. So for right now, we're just going to complete steps 4 and 5, and then we're going to move on to this step right here, step number 2 in this next process map. That will be the end of this particular webinar. We will move forward with processing the application package in a separate webinar. So let's go back now to our minimum requirements checklist. I do have an associate, a colleague on our document team and our training team named Yvette. She's helping me out with this webinar. Yvette, can you tell me what page in our training manual, in case our students are looking at the training manual, what page are we on at this moment in time?
Okay, we're on page 38 of the training
38.
manual.
I'm going to flip back over there, and I think this is the training manual right here. This is our November 2019 version of our training manual. That's the current one that we have out there. And I'm going to go down to page 28.
38.
So that you can, 38. I'm going to go down to page 38. And we're going to, we just kind of move this over here. And, yep, let me do this. So now, page 38, let's see if we can go down there. Okay. 29, 35. All right, here we go. Here's our process map in our training manual. And we're now going to move on to the actual steps in finishing up our application, entering the paper application. This is what we've been doing up to this point. And I have now clicked on the Save and Start Workflow button. And this is the step that we're on now, this task that says Review Minimum Requirements Checklist. So let me flip back to the system, and here is my Minimum Requirements Checklist task. Just so that you can see I actually do have a task in the inbox, I'm going to go over to my inbox. I'm going to click on Tasks. And I want you to see here at the very top, you see today's date. So this is the one we just created. This is the task name right here, Review Minimum Requirements Checklist. It is in a not started state. And so I'm going to go ahead and click on the View. And you'll see I'm right back at that page where we're now ready to conduct our Minimum Requirements Checklist. All right, so let me click on the drop down. And we want to review the application for our minimum requirements. At this point, you should have your application available. Either you printed it out or you have a separate screen monitor that you may have it open. You may also open it just if you don't have multiple monitors. You may want to just open it up in a separate window on the same monitor, but some kind of way you need to open up your application and take a look at it so that you can answer the questions that were set up on your RFA to get through your minimum requirements checklist. At this point, we're going to assume that everything looks good. It does have the correct federal funding. We have the correct match, and we have a complete application. If any of these answers are not yes, you would select, of course, the proper button. And then if it's not a yes, you would need to put a comment either in the specific box that goes with the question, or you can put in something in the overall comment. The system will not let you move forward unless you have a comment if you don't select yes. Okay? Once you've completed this page, save and return to main. We're back on our drop down, and we now have the ability to either approve the application for the minimum requirements. We could reassign this application to another colleague so that they can complete this task, or we can reject the application. Now, only a certified federal program officer can actually reject the application. So if you are uncertified or if you have a role of program office staff and you believe that this application needs to be rejected, you would have to select the reassign application option, send it over to your certified federal program officer, and they would be the one to reject the application. But since we're on what we call the happy path, which means we're just moving right through the system, hopefully there are not going to be too many issues, we're going to go ahead and approve our application for meeting the minimum requirements. So I'm going to select that particular option and submit. And we have now completed that process map right here. This process map is now completed. So the next step for us to do would be to move down, because remember, we're skipping these two optional parts of the process map. Those will be done in the competitive process. We are now here on the preparing our applications for funding. The only thing we're going to do as we complete this particular webinar is going to be the very first task on this process map. The rest of the process map will be covered in a separate webinar. So let me go back to my inbox. Again, I have just completed reviewing my minimum requirements checklist. I did an approve, so I'm going to refresh my inbox. And I have a task now for conduct negotiations. That's what you saw in the process map. I'm going to click on view. And let's go ahead and get started with our conduct negotiations page. The main thing that we're doing here is that we have determined that we're definitely going to fund this particular application. Most of your non-competitive applications, you know ahead of time that you're going to fund them. So at this point, we're now beginning to prepare our application package. This is the first step in doing that. And this particular step, we have to associate this particular application with an award number. It's going to get an award number. We also have to associate it with an organization that's in our database. And so those are the main things that we're going to do on the screen. Let's look for all of our data fields that have asterisks and make sure that they are filled in. And if they're not filled in, we're going to go ahead, because there are a couple of additional data fields that we need to make sure that we fill in on the screen. So project type is the first one. This data field was not, it did not have an asterisk when we did our minimum requirement checklist. So now we need to put it in, and we'll say this is a non-construction application. There's some more optional boxes here. If you want to type in your principal investigator or some keywords, these boxes allow you later on to do searches on your application based on data that you put in these particular boxes. The same thing for proposal number. This allows you to put in, maybe your particular office has your own numbering strategy for your application. So if you have your own office numbering strategy, you would put that proposal number here at the top. Let's keep going. Place of performance. One of the updates that we'll be doing in a future release is to put an asterisk here, because this isn't indeed, at this point, it is a required field. We have to let the system know where the project is actually being done. It defaults to the applicant's legal address, but you can select any of these radio buttons here. Let's say that this particular project is happening across multiple states. You would click multi-state, and at that point, the system is going to refresh the screen, and you don't have anything else to select if it's multi-state. If it's any of the other radio buttons, you would have to add another piece of data. And let's just go ahead and let me show you that. I'm going to click statewide. The system is refreshing the screen, and at this point, I have to select what state it is, because it does not necessarily mean that the project is going to be done in the state where the applicant's address is. So then I would have to select any state here to say, okay, my project is being done, in Nebraska or Montana. Let me select Montana. Okay, so that's the state my project is being, even though my particular organization is a California organization, not Colorado. Remember, I put Colorado in when I first entered the data. I couldn't remember. I did not have an SF-424 in front of me, so I couldn't remember what the actual address for this particular applicant is. This particular applicant happens to be in the state of California. So because I had put in the DUNS number, remember I put the DUNS number in, even though at that point in time it was not required, the system has now picked up the organization record that I already have in the system, because we have already made grants to this organization. So we have already created an organization record. And at this point, the system has automatically associated my application with this particular organization. And that is because I had the DUNS number in on that screen when I entered the DUNS number. And so it found the record for me. If I did not have a DUNS number in when I entered the data, I would have to use this button that says org lookup, and then I would have to go through a few more steps that you will find in your training manual if you have to either create a new organization in our database or find one that's there already. Okay? Let's keep going down the screen. Let's see what else we have on the screen that we need to do. We have all the data we've already entered. Let's keep going. All right, at this point down at the bottom, we have another message that's in red. It's telling us that we now have to associate an authorized representative with this particular application. This is going to be the person that's going to receive the award after the grants officer signs it, so that they can accept it and move forward with the project. This person is the person that has signature authority at the organization. So we're going to click on Authorized Representative Lookup. At this point, we can just click the search button. It will give me everybody that we have in the database for this particular organization, or we can narrow it down by putting in some information that we know is in the name of the authorized representative that we want to use. So in this case, we're using a user that we have in our training database. I'm going to click Select. And now we have associated this particular organization and authorized representative with the application. The last thing that we need to do is we want to generate an award number. If this was going to be a supplement or continuation to an award that was already there, we would select Associate with Existing Award. But for the purposes of training, we're going to click Generate New Award Number. And we now have an award number that has been generated by the system and associated with this particular application. Going forward, this is the number that you would probably want to remember, because as you're beginning to process this award package, that's going to be the identifying number. There is a pattern to the number. The first two characters indicate which bureau in Department of Commerce is giving out this particular award. The next two digits are the fiscal year in which the award is going to be made. The next three characters indicate the line office or the region within that particular bureau. The next three digits right here would indicate the CFDA number, the Catalog of Federal Domestic Assistance. For the Department of Commerce, all of our CFDA numbers start with 11. Then there's a decimal point, and then there's three numbers to the right of the decimal point. We only enter the three numbers to the right of the decimal point in our award number. The last four characters are just system-generated numbers within that pattern. So this is now an award number. It'll eventually become an award number. Right now, it is associated with an application. We don't have an award yet, but eventually it will be the award or grant number for this award. We go down to the bottom again. And one more thing we want to do at this point, because remember we said that this award is going to span 2 years, and let's say that we want to give them some of the money in the first year, and then we're going to hold off on the second amount. We're going to split this and give them some money in the first year and some money in the second year. So at this point, the system doesn't recognize this as a multi-year award because it's only one line of funding at the bottom. see where it says no on multi-year award. So I'm going to edit this record. And I'm going to split this money up. I'm going to cut everything in half. So this will be 5 here. This is going to be 25. 2, 5. This is going to be 2005 here. And I'm going to click Save. All right, so now I have split the money and I have one record for the first year that has half of the funds from this total funding. Now I need to add a new line that will give me the other half. So 5,000 here, 2,500 here, and 2,500 here. Save. All right. So we still have total funding of $20,000, but it has now been split amongst 2 years of funding, and the system has recognized that now we have more than 1 year of funding associated with this application, and it is now flagged this particular application / award as being a multi-year award. Okay? When we start processing the procurement request, which is the funding document for this particular award, it will pick up just the first year of funding, and the first procurement request will be for just the $5,000 in federal funds. The following year, you can do a post-award action, which we call a partial funding or release of funds, and then you would be able to give them the rest of their funds. That's going to be a separate webinar that will be post-award. At this point, I'm going to click Save and Return to Main. And we didn't get any error messages, so we should be in good shape. I am now going to say negotiations are complete and submit, and that completes my conduct negotiations task. Let me show you the other way to get to the process maps if you're inside of Grants Online. Last time I just showed you from a bookmark that I already had, but if you don't have it bookmarked, if you click on your Help tab, it opens up this pop-up screen here. Welcome to Grants Online. Scroll down. Here's a link to our training site. So again, it takes you right back to the training site. As an FYI, by the time you start viewing this particular webinar, you may see a whole different look and feel because we are currently in the process of migrating our training site to a brand new server, and we're completely redone our website here, so it's going to look different from what you see on the webinar, but it'll be the same information. Okay, so for right now, I'm going to click right here, Federal Program Office Training Resources. I am going to again click on Universal Workflow, and let's just see where we are. We have completed our minimum requirements, and we just completed conduct negotiations. So this ends this particular webinar. Yvette, is there anything else that I need to cover? I believe that one thing I did miss is the screen that we wanted to show you about our DUNS number, to kind of let you know why that DUNS number is so important. I believe, here we are, right here. So it's so important that you make sure that you have the correct DUNS number, and I think, and this particular slide in your training manual helps you to understand why it's important to make sure you have the right DUNS number associated with your organization. As you see, your applicant will start with the Dun & Bradstreet their site. They will obtain a DUNS number. They will move into SAM.gov and register in SAM.gov with the DUNS number. That DUNS number follows their application when they put it at grants.gov. In most cases, we're going to be getting our applications from grants.gov. So they have to have that same DUNS number flow into grants.gov. We get that application here. We're going to be comparing the DUNS number in that application from the daily update that we get from SAM.gov to make sure it is a legitimate organization. And then we're going to be moving forward as we process our award, and we're going to go into the our commerce business system, which is our accounting system here at Department of Commerce. And that DUNS number also goes into the ASAP.gov system, which is the system that we use for the grantees. Finally, the DUNS number also gets uploaded to the usspending.gov site. That is the site where we have to report all of our grants each month, and the DUNS number is the identifying number for the organization. Now, I have to give you a caveat because the whole federal government is currently in a major project to transition away from DUNS numbers to a new identifying number called the Universal Entity Identifier. And we will be doing more webinars in the future to talk about that. But for right now, just let's focus on the DUNS number. That is the identifying number and the important number here.